everybody. Today we're going to talk about Prince Markus. Markus was Ventru and the former Prince of Prague until his supposed demise at the hands of the Second Inquisition. Markus was cited as being a prominent figure in slowly rebuilding the reputation of the Ventru in the city, who had not seen prominence since the death of Prince Rudolf Brandl in the late 12th century. Through various projects and acquisitions performed both before and after becoming prince, Markus was seen as a rising star for decades. He presented a welcoming face to all kindred who came to the city regardless of clan, so long as they did not cause trouble and respected the traditions. He even allowed the anarchs a place in the suburbs of the city and maintained a peace with them over the course of his reign despite the rift caused by the First Convention of Prague. Though his outward nature seems welcoming and friendly, Markus regularly exerted control even over members of the city's Primogen Council. With the help of Laraz, his seneschal, he used sensitive or secret information held on many of them to manipulate them as needed, and played ambitious members of clans against one another. Markus was also ambitious to a fault. He had his sights set on the title of prince for many years before he attained it, and held the ultimate goal of eventually joining the inner circle and being one of the leaders of the Camarilla. It was rumored that the Second Convention of Prague, if it had succeeded, would have been a major stepping stone on his path to this goal. Considered to be a cold-hearted strategist by many, he is shrewd in his evaluation of his allies and enemies both. He always seemed to have a backup plan in place if things did not go his way. It was through his careful planning that, before the Second Convention of Prague, tailor shops, antique stores, and delivery vans were stocked with weapons in case the talks did not pan out. With the aid of Custis, he was also responsible for placing key weapon caches around the city for those who knew where to look. Markus is also responsible for the octahedron puzzle boxes, which were created with the help of Omnis. Used to house and protect secrets that have been collected over the years, the devices bear the symbols associated with the different blood resonances, as well as the mark of the prince himself. On the subject of his allies, Markus considered Maya to be fundamentally disloyal based on her conduct at the time Prince Vasily was deposed. He also believes her projected nature of humanitarianism is a self-serving excuse. Because of these beliefs, Markus allowed her to keep her position on the Primogen Council in order to keep her close, as she would be an extremely dangerous enemy. When necessary, he used the fact that Vasily could be found and woken up from torpor as a threat to hold over her. Due to an agreement made with the former prince, Karlak, Markus was required to keep Kirill on as sheriff. It is implied that Kirill frustrated him with his aggressive, bullish nature, but he used the Brujah's utter loyalty to the Camarilla as a goad to point him in the directions he needed, and regularly reminded him of how it was he kept his position. The Nosferatu once repulsed Markus, but he came to consider them indispensable. He acknowledged the impressive rule of Joseph Zvi over the city for nearly 800 years and brought Omnis to the city after becoming prince to lead the clan and help them regain their focus. He believes Omnis to be trustworthy, but worries that the Nosferatu, Omnis included, may one day decide they want to control the city again. To keep Omnis in line, he holds some secret about their generation over the Nosferatu's head. Not much is known about Markus's origins, but it was revealed that he had been operating in Prague since the 1940s. He is a collector of exclusive guns and artifacts and built a small empire, presumably as a dealer in both. His star began to rise during the communist control of the country by launching several projects in the city, finding ways to maneuver around all the red tape. It was around this time that Laraz came to the city, and Markus took note of him and, after a conversation-turned-interview, took him into his confidence. Within a year, the two accomplished several things and opportunity revealed itself. Kano, a powerful associate of then Prince Vasily, was lost. This put Vasily on shaky ground, and all signs pointed to his loss of praxis within a few decades. Though Markus already had aspirations of the throne, the pair thought it would be too dangerous to vie for the throne so soon. Unfortunately, the decision was made for him. Vasily did fall, but not in the way expected. After being beaten into torpor by Karlak, the Brujah awaited challengers for the title. Though from Prague, Karlak had not resided there in many long years because of his work as an Archon and Justicar for the Camarilla. They weighed their options and ultimately decided against contesting his claim. Though the claim was shaky, Karlak was very charismatic and had many powerful allies. Despite princes tending to remain on their throne for long periods of time in Prague, a failed attempt at contesting him would likely have resulted in their deaths. This proved to be the right call, as only a short number of years later, many elders began to succumb to the phenomenon known as the Beckoning, and Markus was able to make his way onto the Primogen Council. Among the Primogen, only Maya had the power to challenge him should another opportunity arise to become prince. In the wake of the loss of so many powerful kindred and the looming threat of the Second Inquisition, planning began for the First Convention of Prague, known at the time as the Conclave of Prague. There were many rumors that would allow for some interesting opportunities, and Laraz believed that the upcoming nights would be busy and dangerous, but also potentially highly rewarding. It is unclear if either Markus or Laraz had direct hand in what befell the convention, but it is implied that they may have steered events in that direction, even if the actual outcome was not something that they could predict. Regardless, the meeting ended in disaster, with Hardstadt, one of the oldest living Ventrue and founder of the Camarilla, slain at the hands of the Archon Theobel. It was the catalyst that led to the defection of most Brujah from the sect and into the arms of the Anarchs. In the aftermath of such a massive disaster, Karlach was forced to abdicate, and Markus's chance had come. The only concessions required by Karlach for his abdication were that the Brujah who stayed loyal to the Camarilla would not be punished, and that Kirill would keep his position as sheriff. Markus met the demand without difficulty, as Kirill's hate towards the Anarchs meant that the clan's focus could be easily kept on combating their traitorous clanmates. With his claim on Praxis secure, and his trusted friend Laraz as his seneschal, the Ventrue set about working to improve the domain. He moved the Elysium from the drafty and old chambers underneath Castle Prague, where it had existed for hundreds of years, to his haven near Old Town Square. He set about strengthening the kindred in the city as well, bringing Omnis to the city to lead the Nosferatu and help them come into their own again. And in an attempt to maintain peace in the city, carved out the suburbs as an Anarch bastion, kept in heavy check by Kirill, who was kept as sheriff per the agreement with Karlach. Maya retained her spot on the Primogen despite the machinations of others, and the Gangrel Custos continued as keeper of Elysium. After only a few short years, Markus set his gaze to higher pursuits and began planning the Second Convention of Prague. Disguised as a human rights summit and presented outwardly as a means to begin official peace talks with the wayward Anarchs, many felt it was just a way for Markus to show off to the greater Camarilla. Despite the presented intent of peace, Markus also began preparing for war. In case things went wrong again, the Camarilla would be well poised to strike back immediately. Despite the preparations, many were not keen on the meeting. Laraz spoke privately with Markus's child M about the dangers the move posed, and that if anything went wrong, it could ruin them all. Kirill flew into a rage at allowing so many Anarchs into the city, only being held in check by Markus's reminder of his place and why he kept it, but went on to explain that he had no love of the Anarchs either, stating that he only allowed them in because he knew Kirill would be able to keep them in line. Even Custos joked secretly with an acquaintance about letting the Second Inquisition wipe the slate clean in the city so that it could start fresh. As the date neared, Markus became more strict in his dealings with the kindred in the city. Just 2 months before the convention, he instituted a decree that stated that any masquerade breach, no matter how small or who had committed it, would be met with an immediate blood hunt without trial. This came as a result of multiple reports of such activity, noting that there had been 6 kindred-related police reports and that they had arrested several ghouls in recent weeks. The behavior was unacceptable, and no chances could be taken so close to the event. An additional decree was issued 27 days prior to the Second Convention, calling on all kindred in the city to immediately report any sighting of the supposed red gas that was used in the attack on the Vienna Chantry many years prior. It was an important enough issue that he even offered clemency for any Anarch who brought actionable information forward. As the fateful event arrived, talks were tense and almost fell to fighting multiple times, but they were saved by quick action from Markus himself as well as others. It is believed the two sides were near an agreement on the final night when the entity attacked and put a violent end to any such possibility. Though Markus's fate was unknown for a time, it was learned through the work of one of Omnis's agents that Markus was holding his own against a number of the hunters, using his clan's ability to dominate the minds of others, but lost focus when a shot struck him. With their minds cleared, one of the hunters turned a flamethrower on him, but Laraz jumped in the way in time to save the prince, allowing him to escape through the secret tunnels beneath the meeting area. They lost his trail shortly after he entered the Nosferatu's underground tunnels. It was later learned that he had ended up in the St. Giles Church, where he was forced to rest for the day. This is the same church that was set ablaze, and it was later learned that all the normal and hidden exits were found blocked when the prince had tried to escape. He sent a last message to Omnis that arrived too late, indicating there may be a traitor in their midst. Reports are mixed on how the fire was set, but evidence from multiple sources suggests the prince did not make it out of the blaze. Maya had the last apparent confirmation via one of her contacts that worked in the church, a video in which you could hear music playing on the organ over the sound of the flames. The same music Markus always played when trying to work through a problem. That covers everything we know about Prince Markus. The real question left behind, though, is this. Is the prince really dead? The news of his demise came swiftly, not long after Omnis learned of his escape from the meeting. Could he have faked his own death knowing that someone was trying to have him killed? Or is he really gone? Let me know what you think in the comments, and until next time, stay safe in Prague.